In this video, we're going to discuss 5 questions in paragraph jumbles without options. This is one of those favorite models for CAT over the last few years. Let's get started. The eponymous scholar, he argued, had become decent, indolent, complacent. So here I see this he. So if there is a way to find out who this he is being referred to, then that would come before this. To become more than a mere thinker, or still worse, the parrot of other men's thinking, a scholar must begin to engage with the world for oneself. In his speech titled The American Scholar, Ralph Waldo Emerson, so this could be the he that we are referring to in the first statement as well, called for the young country to develop a national intellectual life distinct from lingering colonial influences. He also delivered an incisive critique. So this he could also refer to Ralph Waldo Emerson. He also delivered. So in statement 3, it's already given what he said in the speech. And he also delivered should definitely come after statement 3. So I would put statement 3 first, followed by 4. He also delivered an incisive critique of his audience, condemning academic scholarship for its reliance on historical and institutional wisdom. The eponymous scholar. Now, what do you mean by eponymous scholar? When you say eponym is someone after whom something is being named. So as it is given, the American scholar, that is the name of the speech. So the eponymous scholar should come after you speak about the American scholar for the eponymous to make sense. Okay. So after he has spoken about these two, the eponymous scholar, he argued, had become decent, indolent, complacent. So that's more like a problem. Okay. So this is speaking of a problem. To become more than a mere thinker, or still worse. So this is speaking of the solution. So I would go with 3, 4, followed by 1 and 2. So 3 introduces a context, like who is speaking, on what he is speaking. So this is the intro statement. It introduces Ralph Waldo Emerson, and he is speaking under this topic, the American scholar, right? And he also delivered an incisive critique. So the key here is also, because he did say something in statement 3 itself, it is given, and in 4 he also did something is given, and 1 speaks of the problem, 2 speaks of the solution. So that is the flow of idea in this question. So the best order we have got is 3, 4, 1 and 2 for this question. Tagore's poetry of these years reveals the stages by which his ideological and aesthetic views evolved into the humanist doctrine of the divine nature of life, inspired by the Upanishads and the ideals. Now, what I'm interested about in the first statement is Tagore's poetry of these years. So which years are we speaking about? So let's see if there is some kind of revelation about which years are we speaking about. He now made them. He is referring to whom? Most likely it could be Tagore. Made them. So who is them referring to? Let's see. The heroes of his work. After taking over the management of his family's estate in this place, in the last decade of the 19th century, Tagore became acquainted at first hand with the life of the working people. Okay, so this them could be referring to this working people. The short story, The Cloud and Sun, was a vivid picture of the British colonial rule, depicting the authorities' often cruel treatment of the peasants and how the protagonist fights against injustice. So this part, protagonist fights against injustice, that could be the heroism that we are looking at here. Right? Because we saw it is given, he now made them the heroes of his work. Obviously, his work is being discussed here, the short story, and how they became heroes. So the heroism is probably being given here. So let's see how we can connect these sentences. We can start with this one. After taking over the management of his family, he became acquainted at first hand with the life of the working people. So if I'm starting with 3, that introduces the other character, that is working people in this context. He now made them the heroes of his life. So he got acquainted with them and he now made them, which is the working people, heroes of his works. So 3 followed by 2. And the work is being discussed in 4. The short story, The Cloud and Sun, was a vivid picture of the British colonial rule, depicting the authorities' awful cruel treatment and how the protagonist fights against injustice. So that explains the heroism. Now, where do I fit this one? Tagore's poetry of these years, if you look at this in the fourth statement, it is given the short story, The Cloud and Sun, was a vivid picture of the British colonial rule. So that is the years that we are speaking about, right? That could explain which years are we speaking about. So Tagore's poetry of these years reveals the stages by which his ideological and aesthetic views evolved. So I can put that as the last one. So let's see how the ideas were flowing here. So here we had the introduction about how Tagore got acquainted with the life of working people. Then he made them heroes of his work. Then they took a particular work and showed how the heroism was shown in the work. And this work also spoke about the period, British colonial rule, and Tagore's poetry of these years. So these years is the connection here. The Tagore's poetry of these years had what nature is given in statement 1. So 3, 2, 4, 1 is the order for this question. India has an estimated 63.4 million unincorporated non-agricultural MSMEs, of which 99% are micro-sized, informal, one person or a few employees strong, with unregulated arrangements of employing workers with little or no records. This can even start. Implementation, however, will not be easy. Okay, however is the key here. We'll have to see how this however can be justified. Implementation, however, will not be easy, and distribution of financial aid to the MSMEs may not be effective because of challenges with identifying and targeting those most in need. Statement 1 speaks of the huge numbers of unincorporated non-agricultural MSMEs, and this is speaking of challenges with identifying and targeting those most in need. So I think these two could be related here, but for now, let's say this is speaking of a problem. What is needed is the creation of a real-time information system to identify. So this is speaking of a solution, definitely. The center started by approving a change in the definition of MSMEs, increasing the limits of capital and turnover for companies to qualify for each category to address the problem. Look at this. Address the problem. So this is definitely part of solution. And as it says address the problem, we should have the problem statement coming before that. Only then the problem will make sense in this one. The government recently announced a rupees 20 lakh crore package, including a slew of announcements to support the MSMEs. Okay, now that tells me how we can justify this, however, for implementation. So a package was announced, however, implementation could face problems. So let's go for the order now. I would go with 5 to begin with, because that speaks of an announcement. And then 2 says implementation of whatever was announced could be a problem. And why is a problem? Because there will be challenges with identifying and targeting those most in need. And 1 says, why identifying and targeting the most in need is a problem? Because there are 63.4 million unincorporated MSMEs. Okay. And let's just group these two together. These two are about the problem. And then when you come to 3, it outlines a solution. What is needed is the creation of a real-time information system to identify beneficiaries of government schemes. The center started by approving. So this is a solution. How the solution has been implemented, or how the center started implementing the solution, is given in statement 4. So I can follow this up with 4, and these two are part of the solution. So if you look at the flow of ideas, 5 came up with an announcement made by the center, and 2 said, however, implementation will face challenges. Why will there be a challenge? And what is the challenge given here? Challenge with identifying and targeting those most in need. Now, why would that be a problem? Because there are 63.4 million unregistered MSMEs. So those two speak about the problem, and why is that a problem. 3 says what is needed is the creation. So it outlines the solution. It outlines the solution. And 4 says the center started by approving. So it speaks of how the implementation started. Implementation of the solution, how it started. So that's how the ideas are flowing through them. So 5, 2, 1, 3, 4. 5, 2, 1, 3, 4 is the answer for this question. Let us try this question. Over the last year, the Arunachal government and the Indian Army have sought to develop the area around the Shumigyatsi Falls, which is highly revered for Tibetan Buddhists, or Monpas on both sides of the border, as a tourist site. The falls are said to be, so definitely this should come before you can start speaking about the falls, are said to be about 250 meters from the LAC near Yaxti area, which is one of the disputed regions along the McMahon line demarcating the Tibetan Autonomous Region of China and Arunachal Pradesh. This will help boost religious and cultural tourism. So which will help boost? What is this referring to here? Probably that they have sought to develop the area. Probably that might be this is being referred to here, right? That they have sought to develop the area that will help boost religious and cultural tourism in the border areas and enable pilgrims to visit the sacred site. Little is known about the Chinese activity to develop the spot on its side of the falls. See, the statement 2, it spoke about a McMahon line demarcating Tibet Autonomous Region of China and Arunachal Pradesh. And little is known about the Chinese activity to develop the spot on its side. The two sites were mentioned here. And 4 speak about little is known about the Chinese activity to develop the spot on its side of the falls. But different sources said the Chinese are keeping an eye, placing a surveillance camera, a projector, and a large screen at the border overlooking the falls to get live images. The state has built infrastructure like roads that lead up to the remote Sheikh. So if you look at this, it was given in the first statement that Arunachal government and Indian Army have sought to develop the area. And here they are explaining what exactly did they do. The state has built infrastructure like roads that lead up to the remote Sishu village near the line of actual control, and only a walk over a kilometer for another 30 minutes will take you to the site. So if you have to go for the order, I would put 1 that speaks about Arunachal government and the Indian Army seeking to develop the area. And what exactly did they do is given in 5. So I can follow that up with 5. That the state has built infrastructure like roads that lead up to the remote Sishu village. From there, it's only a small stretch to reach the site. This will help boost religious and cultural tourism in the border areas, which will help all these activities, these development activities. So I can follow 5 with 3. The falls are said to be around 250 meters and all that. And then they spoke about the McMahon line demarcating the Chinese part and Arunachal Pradesh. And then we can follow it up with 4, which says little is known about what Chinese are doing on their side. So 1, 5, 3, 2, and 4 would be the order. Let's quickly see how the ideas were flowing across these. So one spoke about the 2, Arunachal government and the Indian Army seeking to develop the area around a particular falls. 5 said, what exactly did they do? So it spoke about built infrastructure like roads. So this development means what exactly is being done as development is given in 5. And 3 says this will help boost. So whatever development is whatever development is happening here, that will help boost tourism and so on. This spoke about the McMahon line, and which divides into the Chinese part and Arunachal part. And 4 says what Chinese are doing in their part, because we spoke about the 2 parts here. What Chinese are doing in their part is not clear, is given in 4. So the order should be 1, 5, 3, 2, 4 for this question. Let us solve this question. According to him, this was what was most. No, what is this? Who is this him? What is this referring to? This was what was most fascinating about Renaissance art. It was a time that glorified the tension between the real and the unreal. At the end of a 60-minute documentary, Raphael, the Madonna of the Meadow by Matthew Collins. So probably this is the hymn that is being referred to in statement 1. Matthew Collins, he is the hymn that is being referred to. The enthralled spectators knew a little more about one of the greatest artists of the High Renaissance. Understanding a painting, especially a masterpiece, is not an easy task for the untrained eye. Collins calls the painting an exclusive box of light. Okay, the statement which uses Collins should come after the statement that introduces the person with the full name, Matthew Collins. Collins calls the painting an exclusive box of light, where the three characters with halos over their heads and sanctified in the everydayness of the town in the background. But it is so alive, you're almost tempted to pinch the infants. Now this part, it is so alive, you're almost tempted to pinch the infants. Now if you look at the first statement, it says it was a time that glorified the tension between the real and the unreal. Tension between the real and the unreal. And here they are mentioning that it is so alive that you are almost tempted to pinch the infants. Now that is in line with the tension between the real and the unreal, because it's a photo, but you're feeling like you should go and pinch the infant. So that's the tension between real and unreal. Unraveling its secrets, moving back and forth in time before and after its creation is the best way to understand an artist. See, it's given here in statement 3, understanding a painting, especially a masterpiece, is not an easy task. Unraveling its secrets, moving back and forth in time before and after its creation is the best way to understand. So understanding a painting is not an easy task, but doing this is the best way to understand. So now let's put things together. 3. Why are we starting with 3? It's a very general statement. We can start with it. Understanding a painting, especially a masterpiece, is not an easy task for the untrained eye. Doing this is the best way to understand an artist and his work. So these two are slightly general. Now coming to this, at the end of a 60-minute documentary, Raphael, the Madonna of the Meadow, by Matthew Collins, the enthralled spectators knew a little more about one of the greatest artists of the High Renaissance. So let me put that here. Let's see what can follow that up with. Collins calls the painting an exclusive box of light. So the painting is the one that is being given here. So he's speaking about that one. So I can put 4 after 2. Exclusive box of light, where the three characters with halos over their heads and sanctified in everydayess of the town in the background. But it is so alive, you are almost tempted to pinch the infants. According to him, this was what? The fact that you feel like even pinching the infant in a photo or in a painting. That you feel like pinching an infant in a painting. According to him, this was what was the most fascinating about the Renaissance art. So this should be followed by 1. So these 3 are speaking about a specific case of an art. Okay, these 3 are connected, these 2 are connected, and it is better to go with general and then go into particular. So the best order we have here is 3, 5, 2, 4, and 1. The flow of ideas, if we were to quickly inspect. So 3 spoke about understanding a painting is difficult. Understanding is not easy for the untrained. Doing this is the best way to understand. Understanding is not generally easy, but doing this is the best way to understand. Then this introduced Matthew Collins and the documentary. This further says how Collins describes the painting, and towards the end it said that it is so alive you're almost tempted to pinch the infant. And that is followed up in 1, which says that according to him, this was the most fascinating about Renaissance art, that is the tension between real and unreal. That's how the ideas flow in this question.